They come to Australia. They set up their enclaves in where? Tell me where. Epping, Chatswood, Bexley, Kingsgrove, and in Melbourne, where? Box Hill, Glen Waverley, Doncaster, some beautiful suburbs. And they can literally speak Mandarin and Mandarin only. They don't need to learn English because there are freaking Mandarin signs on the roads now. They literally can have a parallel society that is separate and unintegrated from Australia. And that, my friends, is a problem. I'm about to go on a rant about Indian people in Australia and Chinese people in Australia, so buckle up, strap yourselves in, get ready to call me racist. It's going to be a fun video. I am a Chinese guy. I think the Indians are making the same mistake that my brethren from mainland China made coming here in the 2010s. See, the thing about the Chinese immigrants that I'm born out of, I was born in Australia, but my parents came here. My mum was Maori, my dad was Chinese. They came here in the 70s and early 80s, and there's a whole bunch of Asians who came to Australia around this period. Many of them came from the Chinese diaspora. So this is from Hong Kong and Taiwan and Malaysia and Singapore, not so much from mainland China. There was this huge influx. And we have all been really good bananas, haven't we? We've integrated incredibly well. I'm the first generation born here, and we are basically yellow on the outside and white on the inside. And the thing is, we integrated well, and we should integrate well. Just like in other countries, if you were to move to Italy today and say, I'm going to make it just like my Singaporean hometown, they would laugh at you. Or if you said, I'm going to move to the USA and make it just like Australia, they would laugh at you, because these places have a sense of pride and patriotism about their existing cultures. And they even if they are welcoming of other cultures, like I'm a Chinese man goes over there, they're still not going to want me to turn it into a giant Chinatown because they're proud of their Italian heritage, right? But in Australia, oh no, we have to be super, super sensitive to making sure that if you come from Africa, or if you come from India, or if you come from the PRC, from mainland China, it has to be set up the way you want it. And so we are importing an extreme. I was at the front coalface of this. I'll tell you about the migration law firm I had. Literally bringing in the mainland Chinese. We are bringing in so many Indians right now, and I think they're making the same mistake we made in the 2010s, and it's going to cause a reaction, and we don't want that reaction. We want integration, and you can't integrate when you have numbers coming in this fast. So when I was running this law firm, right, it peaked in 2008 to 2010. The numbers peaked, but it went anywhere from 2005 to 2019. There was this massive influx of mainland China people coming to Australia. Most of the pathway, it was completely saturated. It was student visa, pathway to permanent residency, and then you start sponsoring your family, and you just have this massive, massive influx. And you get this tension between the Asian immigrants who are here in the first wave that my family was part of, and the tension between that group and then the new Asians that came mainly from mainland China, from a very different culture that I'll explain in a minute, that has a tension with the first group because they're very, very different. We all know this. As Australians, we've seen what's happened around 2008 to 2015. You've seen mainland China come and storm our shores. You've seen them being excessively rude. You've seen them buying up all of our property. You've seen them coming with the flashy Louis Vuitton handbags and Lamborghinis and Audis, and it's all about, we don't understand as Australians that we think it's about saving face. You don't understand. China has two very distinct cultures, and the one that you're pissed off about is not the first one, the saving face culture. The one that you're and we and me as a Chinese man is pissed off about is the second culture that came out of China, and that's the post-revolution Chinese culture. That it's all about pure, hardcore winning, competition, domination, wealth. When you go to a ski lift in Japan, you know, even if you can't tell the difference between our eyes and who's Japanese, who's Chinese, which is very easy, Korean, is very easy for me to tell. But if you're a white skipper who can't tell, this is how you tell. The Japanese people and the old school Chinese Confucian era people, like where my families are from, are all going to be lined up waiting for the ski lift. the mainland modern post-cultural revolution Chinese people are going to be pushing in loud at the front, getting whatever they can, dog eat dog. And that's how you identify that's the Chinese tourist, not the Japanese tourist, all right? So what has happened in China is there's this great cultural revolution, 60s, 70s, Mao, and they literally went on a battle and razed, as in R-A-Z-E-D, destroyed temples, destroyed culture, burned stuff down, because Mao comes in against the old school Han Chinese culture and wants to smash it. They literally had a policy called killing the four olds, the old ways of thinking, the old, I can't even remember what they are, but they were just trying to destroy everything because they thought it was not pragmatic enough. So it's kind of this extreme utilitarianism that came into China. And you've got to understand the cultural violence this was. You have a whole bunch of people fleeing around when this was happening because they are seen as the old Confucian style Chinese kind of way. And there's a shocking overlap between the Confucian style of Chinese and the English Enlightenment Christian values. So you've got this heavy Buddhism, Confucian style stuff from old school classical China, and it overlaps heavily with the Western, Anglo-Western type values that we all have, like in Australia, UK, Canada, and so on. For example, things like saving face or being polite or respect for elders, or downplaying achievements. These are all very British things, and then Australian things. Lifelong pursuits of arts and calligraphy and poetry, these kinds of things. But then after the destruction in China, when Mao goes on his rampage, he literally inflicted massive cultural violence on the Chinese people, and he remade China into this utilitarian hellhole where I have interviewed the leading transplant surgeons in Australia who were training Chinese surgeons on how to do organ transplants, and he refused to teach them in the end because they kept on going back and using their skills to do illegal organ harvesting in China. This is a guy who invented some of these techniques here in Australia. I've interviewed him. So China became this utilitarian hellscape, which basically has lost all of the ethical base that we had in the Confucian culture and that we have in the English culture. Now, there is this interracial tension between the old Chinese and the new Chinese. The new Chinese that are a result of this cultural violence, they have things like hyper-competitiveness. Have we all seen this amongst the Chinese, mainland China specifically? You won't really find this in Thailand and Taiwan and Malaysia and Singapore, though those are very competitive places. In mainland China, it's tear down your neighbor and get what you can get. It's a survival mechanism. It's from a trauma of what has happened to them. Kids have been raised in this culture, and it's only starting to change and update now as the youngest generation is being opened up to the internet. But even so, they're still very, very much behind China's closed wall, right? So they're still not quite free. But under this new system, as I said, you've got this hyper competitiveness. You've got the people being rude at the chairlift. You've got the confrontational nationalism you see online, inspired by PRC, the political arm of the Chinese People's Republic, the communists, the CCP. You see the confrontational style on the internet. They go full gung-ho on that. Education is a brutal status race now. Has been since the Cultural Revolution. It's no longer this lifelong pursuit of arts and calligraphy and poetry and meaning and so on. It has that. So all the things that we're hating in Australia, when they come up and buy all of the property and do Louis Vuitton gaudy looking displays, flashy displays of wealth, all of this is really a traumatized Chinese population. And I understand not everyone is traumatized, but there is a cultural history of trauma, and they are expressing that in a hyper-competitive utilitarian way without the ethics. And that, my friend, is the type of Chinese that people hate. They come to Australia, right? And they set up enclaves. I've ranted about this so much on Discernible already. Family members of mine have done this too. They have come from mainland China, in the 2000s. They come to Australia. They set up their enclaves in where? Tell me where. Epping, Chatswood, Bexley, Kingsgrove, and in Melbourne, where? Box Hill, Glen Waverley, Doncaster, some beautiful suburbs. And they can literally speak Mandarin and Mandarin only. They don't need to learn English because there are freaking Mandarin signs on the roads now. They literally can have a parallel society that is separate and unintegrated from Australia. And that, my friends, is a problem, because you have you have these tensions rising, and ultimately we're going to get a reaction, and we don't want that reaction. Now, thankfully, the Chinese have been reasonably okay at integrating, even this latest mainland China. They generally come in and win. They come in and they win the education game, they win the status game, they're rich, they buy all the homes, and Doncaster is now a beautiful place. If you've been to Doncaster or Chatswood, some of these homes, or Burwood in Sydney, some of these places are beautiful and expensive, have nice homes and nice people. They're not going to, in general, rob you, all right? They're just here for status games. The Indian community is being shoveled in on steroids. The immigration to this country is stunningly high, and despite what they tell us, it's often unskilled migration. This is, we don't have enough people to plumb and do electrician stuff and build homes. Well, then why are we bringing so many unskilled migrants from India? So anyway, I don't know much about the Indian history. I'd love for some of you who with an Indian background or knowledge in the matter to educate in these threads on, is there a difference between the Indians who came here in the 80s and 90s and the Indians who are being rushed in now? Because the numbers are so overwhelming. Because in the end of the day, we can't really blame families for coming here into USA, into Canada and Italy and UK and whatever. The incentive is there to give your family a better life. But the politicians they've got the fire hose full of third world country people, and they're just pouring it into our nation. How is it even possible that they're going to integrate? I'm concerned that they're going to make enclaves, just like my race made enclaves, and there's tensions there. I'm detecting it again. Back when I grew up Asian, we integrated, it was fine. There was a little bit of racism, but who cares? They made a bit of fun in the playground, who cares? But then when the mainland people came in 2010, the angst against the Chinese definitely rose. All of us who were bananas who were already here, we felt it. Suddenly people were like, why these Chinese are taking over, being flooded by Asians, all the rest of it. And in a sense, I'm going to side with my white friends because I'm of that original Confucian style culture, I guess, even though now I'm a Christian, European-minded male. I identify more with the Confucian style of classical China. Now, the mainland China people will say, you're a wannabe white banana. You're not actually a real Chinese. But they're like a wannabe Soviet. They're like Mao copied Lenin, and you have this, frankly, disgusting culture now in China. The classical original Chinese culture, beautiful, stunning. Noble parts to it, absolutely good call. The modern style that we see in China now for mainland China, which most of the people coming here are a part of, disgusting, absolutely disgusting. The way they will do organ harvesting, which I've documented on my channel, the way that they would disappear people, and I know America is bad too, I know that all countries can be bad, but the underlying culture of utilitarianism and lack of ethics in China, they hate religion, all religions. They hate Christian, they hate Muslim, they will persecute the Uyghur population, they'll persecute the Christian, they'll go after anyone. The only religion you're allowed in China is religion to the state, right? Fealty to the state. It is disgusting. It is the most disgusting culture I know on the face of this planet. Has to be that. I think it's even more disgusting than the crazy culture you see in Iran when they're throwing gay people off buildings, because the most ridiculous stuff that's happened in history has not been Hitler. It has not been, even though that was disgusting, it has not been the crazy stuff they're doing in Iraq, the Taliban, throwing gay people off buildings, also disgusting. The most disgusting, most deaths have come from the Cultural Revolution of Mao. Utilitarianism and government overreach has been the number one killer of humans in history, has killed more than diseases. It's disgusting. That's why I'm so angry about it. Now, I'm concerned that the Indian population is going the same way, in the sense that there's going to be angst between the existing Indians and the current Indians in Australia. So much so, let me read to you a post. I've got someone I follow on X. He has a friend who's 35, been here for decades. Crap, I've got to find it now. Here we go. So this guy's best mate and business partner is Indian, 35 years old. He's born in Australia, came here at 3 months, born there in India, but came to Australia at 3 months old. He is also concerned about his Indian brethren coming here, right? He says this: Aussies are going to end up hating us Indians. It's the government's fault for allowing so many of us to migrate here in such a short time, whilst screwing up the economy for the people who are already here, of all colours and all races and all religions, right? So now Aussies are starting to see Indians everywhere, and they blame us, the Indians who are doing a good job here, integrating. I felt racism as an Indian when I was around 8 to 14 years old, and never again after that for about 20 years. But in the last 12 months, I've felt it again, because people are looking at you twice, they're being rude, they're thinking that you're just some new Indian Uber driver who doesn't care about the commons. Have you seen this, throwing rubbish into the river? I can definitely feel the hate rising again. And he goes on to talk about how the birth rates in the third world are going to rapidly outpace the birth rates in the first world, in Australia, Canada, UK, and so on. And so this importation, you import the third world, you become the third world, right? So this is what happened with Trump in America, why so many Hispanics went Republican. Because you understand the divide is not between white and every other color like me, yellow, brown, black. There is a divide between, if I had to line up and choose a team, I would probably line up with the white Australians saying, where's my culture gone? Because I feel the same thing, right? I also agree that I don't like the way that the culture is going now. And so I think there'd be a bunch of us classical Chinese Australian people lining up with the white Australians. And same in the US. You've got the Hispanic Trump supporters, massive now, lining up with the white Anglo-Trump MAGA supporters against the illegal immigration over there and against the overpopulation that we're seeing in places like Australia. So tell me, if you're Indian, you can shed some light on this. Is there a difference between the two cultures of Indians who came here before and they're coming here now? And overall, our anger should be at the government. What the hell are they doing? There is zero chance of integration when you do things this quickly. And the scariest part of all is it always brings a reaction. Reform UK, not that they're necessarily a bad thing, but there's a strong reaction. And then Tommy Robinson, not necessarily that he's a bad thing. You know, I know a little bit about him, but not everything. People claim he's some raging racist, but when you listen to him on interviews like Trigonometry, he sounds quite reasonable. These kinds of reactions are coming, and we just want to have our beautiful, diverse society in Australia. When I say diverse, I don't mean diverse of values. We should all have the same sign up to the same value system. That's why you're in Australia. If you like the value systems of China, then go back to freaking China. But diverse in terms of how we look, my eyes, my genes, what I eat, how I smell. I don't care that it's the Indian smell because they eat all these spices. Yeah, whatever, bro. Then don't marry one, all right? They have bloody good food and the spices come out in their pores. Who cares? I care about values, man. Are they going to uphold and sign up to the values of Australia? Do we even know what the values of Australia are anymore? Or are we just continuing to dilute them into this great big power play of the elite versus the rest of us, pumping GDP and the housing Ponzi forever? I think that's the end of the rant. Whew. What about the fact that we're trying to say sorry for destroying the indigenous Aboriginal culture in Australia? You know, the left-wing position is we need to recognise it, champion it, and so on. And yet, when you talk about trying to preserve an Anglo culture, or even, it's not even about the colour of the skin. Look at me, I'm not white. It's about preserving the Enlightenment values we had came from Britain. Oh no, now you're racist. It's not logically consistent.